Welcome to the Take the North podcast. I'm David Haugh from the 670 Score Mully and Haugh Show, and Adam Studzinski, our producer, is here tonight. Dan Weeder is chasing a deadline out at SoFi Stadium in LA after the Chargers beat the Bears 30-13. Sunday Night Football, another nationally televised loss. Adam, I think this is now 7 straight, dating back to 2018. The next time the Bears are on Sunday Night Football, they should petition to be off of it. Disappointing game from the get-go. It was billed, certainly, understandably, as the Tyson Bagent story. They didn't lose because of Tyson Bagent. The defense was shoddy. There are other factors obviously contributing, but I think the conversation on Monday is going to be about the Bears quarterback situation.
Mm-hmm.
Tyson Bagent, 2 interceptions, did not have a great night, did not probably take advantage of the opportunity, but there were a lot of reasons why the Bears were certainly outclassed and beaten badly tonight.
Yeah, it was it was just a sad game, honestly. Like I we were texting towards the front of the game about when we're gonna do the post game pod, and I told you we could probably just do it right now.
Yeah.
And that was when the game was like 14-0, I think. So yeah, it just a sad game. And I don't know what it was about this team that they just didn't seem to have an edge to them like they did last week. At least that was my observation on it. And, with Tyson Bagent, I think you saw his limitations as an NFL quarterback. We talk about the quick decision making and the quick release and everything, but some of those throws that he's making on the sideline are getting batted down or almost intercepted because he can't get the ball there fast enough or he's late to the throw.
I think that's a good way to put it. The weaknesses balanced the strengths, and the limitations were more obvious than they were against a team that had 2 edge rushers that obviously are elite in Bosa and Khalil Mack, and those are guys bearing down on you all the time that you have to be aware of. I also believe that having, obviously this is within an hour of the game ending, but I think that when you look at the way that they seem to at times confuse, if not confuse, it certainly complicate things at the line of scrimmage for Bagent more than the Raiders did. And you could see that maybe having a game on tape or 6 quarters on tape or whatever, they were able to try to exploit things and make him more hesitant or tentative than he was when he was against the Raiders, getting the ball and taking his steps and throwing it. So there were a lot of reasons why. I do think the arm strength was, I don't want to say exposed, but it was certainly a noticeable limitation. And again, he was in a position against the Raiders where his number one and primary objective was don't lose this game.
Right.
And tonight, because of how badly the Bears defense played, he was put in a position, please win this game.
Yeah.
And there's a big difference there in the ask, especially when you're talking about an undrafted rookie free agent. So I'll just say now, and I wrote this on 670score.com, and people can go check it out. I don't think that there's going to be a question if Justin Fields is healthy enough to practice or play against the Saints. I think it goes back to him. You need to know more about him. You need to know more about what you have and give him the chance to prove those things. So the quarterback will get a lot of attention this week. Defense deserves it.
Yeah. Yeah, if this was a halfway normal team, we'd probably be spending the whole week talking about how poorly the defense played, especially in the first half. I mean, they couldn't tackle at all. And excuse me, Tyreek Stevenson had I think a rough game covering. He made a bunch of tackles, which was good for me. I have him in an IDP, individual defensive player league in fantasy. I picked him up at the last minute. So he had like 12 points because he had so many tackles, but it's not that great when you're getting beaten coverage all the time. And, it's interesting you bring up like what the Chargers did defensively against Bagent. It was kind of weird that the Raiders didn't do more last week to try to confuse him. They pretty much just played straight up. They didn't really blitz a whole lot. And the Chargers, we know that Brandon Staley really is in charge of that defense. And they didn't, I don't think, blitz a ton, but like you said, they gave the illusion of pressure a lot, and they ended up only bringing 4 or 5.
They did enough to make him hesitant, and they did enough to make him think. And I think that what we saw against the Raiders was a guy relying on his instincts, which are above average. And you know what you saw again tonight was this guy is got a place on an NFL roster. He's going to be a backup probably for a while. He's almost like a modern day Josh McCown or more, because he's good in the room. He's a great personality. He has leadership qualities, and you like that. But
Mhm.
I do think that when he hesitates, you're going to see that half step that makes a difference. And I think also, Adam, I think that we'll talk about this week, but when the contrast is so stark between what you have in your
Mhm.
rookie quarterback and what your opponent has, that's what a $262 million quarterback looks like.
Yeah, yeah.
That's why teams like the Bears obsess over that decision. Who are they going to draft next year? Will they be in a position to move on from Justin Fields? Because if you have a Justin Herbert, you appreciate what you have and you pay him what he's worth. And he was special tonight, 31 out of 40, 298, 3 touchdowns, passer
Yeah.
rating 122.7.
And he completed his first
15.
15
Yep.
passes? Yeah. I mean, that was insane. I mean, and it because a lot of it was just guys were just kind of unfortunately, usually the guy that wasn't on Jalen Johnson were just kind of open 5 yards down the field, 10 yards down the field. Like, he didn't really have to do much. The Bears weren't getting any pressure at all. I'm not trying to take anything away from Justin Herbert's game. He had a really good game, but it almost seemed effortless
It
because
was
he had a
pitch and
clean.
catch.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
it was clean pocket, gonna get the ball out, not having to stand in there very long because my guys are getting open pretty easily. So it was just a casual stroll down the field for most of the game for the Chargers. And I do
No,
think we.
yeah.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Well,
No,
I just.
I think his numbers contrasted so much with Bagent. Bagent was 25 or 37,
Mhm.
232, 2 picks without any touchdowns. His passer rating 62.
Right, yeah, and so there's like you said, that's what a $200 million quarterback looks like, and that's that's why the Chargers paid him, and that's why the Bears need to figure out the answer on Justin Fields going forward. Because if they think he can be that guy, we need to figure it out now. I think we know what Tyson Bagent is now. I
Yeah.
think we've seen what his ceiling is. We've seen that he can win a game if his team plays well around him, but he's not going to be, he's rarely, I should say, going to be the guy that you're winning because of. And I do want to bring this up before we get too far down the road here.
Mhm.
DJ Moore only had 6 targets tonight,
Right.
which is inexcusable in a game that you're down multiple scores almost the entire time. I don't know how that happens. And Eberflus was asked about it after the game. He said he's got to go back and see what the Chargers were doing, but it just I don't care what kind of coverage they're running. You have to find a way to get him the ball more than 4 catches in this game.
I don't know how on 4th and 2 you target Darrington Evans,
Yeah, I
your backup running back who split out wide to the right, and let's throw him a pass because that that's just not smart. And I wonder how much of that is Luke Getzey. I wonder how much of that is having a quarterback who's not experienced, checking into a play that may not be the right one. It's hard to say, but I agree with you. When you throw 37 times, you're sacked once. That's 38 pass plays. More than 6 should be directed toward the
yeah.
best player on your offense.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's completely inexcusable, and it feels like how many times this season have we had this conversation? Get DJ Moore the ball more often.
Right.
And like because you can't have a game where he only has 6 targets, and it's like I know that teams are doing a lot of things to while they're doubling him. I know he said that he's had 3 or 4 guys on him at times. So I know on those plays you're not going to give him the ball, but get him quick slants, quick screens, drag him across the field, do something to get him open and to get him the ball, especially when you have a backup quarterback in the game and when you're losing by 14, 17, 20 points the entire time.
Let's touch on a couple quick things just to get your impression of those. I don't think we'll give out game balls tonight, but I want to talk about a couple plays. If you get blown out on national television, I don't think you deserve game balls.
No, I mean, yeah, I don't know who, maybe Cole Kmet would get one. He had a
Yeah,
nice
he
game,
caught
but
10 passes.
yeah.
First play of the game, first pass play of the game, deep ball
Yeah.
to Darnell Mooney. Matt Eberflus said post game that Mooney should have gotten up and kept running. And if you're coached that way, you're going to sell it like, hey, I
Mhm.
scored a touchdown. He didn't do that. How big of a play do you think that was?
It was weird because I didn't realize on the first look, I thought that maybe like they were saying the initial contact that the defender made on Darnell Mooney before the pass got there was like counting as him being touched, but
It didn't
you know,
though.
you yeah, it didn't. Yeah, and I thought it was weird that they blew it dead. Usually that's the kind of play where it's like I thought that these officials are pretty much told like if it's a question on a play like that, let it go and we can that's what we have review for. We can go back and review, oh yeah, he was touched, the ball's coming back. So I mean, I don't know how much it would have really impacted the game itself. I mean, let's say like he does stand up and he ends up scoring, or they get a field goal out of it because he got 20 more yards before anyone got there. Like the way the Bears defense was playing tonight, I don't think that it would have made a huge impact on the outcome, but
Probably
maybe
not.
maybe it creates a little more momentum for the offense and it's a little closer. Maybe we're talking about a 10-point loss instead of a 17-point loss.
Yeah,
But
I think
it
that's
was
probably
weird. It
yeah.
was weird. I mean, I think it was just the theme of the night. The officiating was not at its best
It was
at
clunky
times.
for a
Yeah.
nationally televised audience. It was clunky. The other one had nothing to do with officials, but if I were Ryan Poles, I would cut Bayless Jones on Monday.
Oh God, yeah.
I just don't know how you can allow a third round draft pick to continue to make such big play mistakes that really are just a matter of either concentration or lack of ability or something. But he dropped that pass, and I don't really care
Mhm.
if it was a little bit underthrown. You're an NFL wide receiver, you're in the end zone, you're uncovered, it hits you in the chest. You've got to catch that ball.
Yeah, that just can't happen. And I
Yeah,
don't, we've had this conversation about Velus Jones too many times. Like I understand he's been better this year. He hasn't made like the critical mistakes. This is the first time that I think we can point and say like, yeah, he really messed up this season. Like he's become a good kick returner. He's been used a little bit more within the offense on various, whether you want a screen or they tossed the ball to him once last week. But like that can't happen. That can't happen. I understand you slipped. I understand the ball was a little underthrown. The ball got there. The ball hit you in the chest, and the turf probably didn't help him when he was slipping. But that's a whole different conversation about field turf. But like it it just can't happen. And yeah, I don't think they're going to cut him tomorrow because their
I
wide
don't
receiver
either.
depth isn't. Yeah,
Yeah,
it'd be nice if they could because their wide receiver depth just, especially after they got rid of Chase Claypool, is just not good enough to jettison anyone really. And it just after this season though, I think he barely made the team this year, right? Like if Dante Pettis doesn't get hurt in the preseason, then I don't know if he does make the team.
good
So
point. So
yeah,
the other thing I wanted to talk about was Eddie Jackson was in uniform and
right.
active, but didn't play that I saw, and he wasn't on the stat sheet. Jaquan Brisker was out with an illness. I would like to know more about the Eddie Jackson situation. We don't know. We're not there, but very curious that he would be active but not play.
Yeah, I thought that was weird too. I mean, I guess maybe they just needed him for like he I don't know. We had this conversation I think earlier this season with one of the offensive linemen who was active but didn't play, and it's like if you're active, then you're supposedly healthy enough to play. And when the Bears are already thin in their secondary, especially with their safeties with Jaquan Brisker out, you think he would be on the field. And if he's not healthy enough to play, then why is he active? So like I'm sure that'll be a question tomorrow. For he wasn't asked about it tonight in post game, but and this is not the first time we've seen this with Eddie Jackson too, right? Remember the
Right.
playoff game against the Eagles in 2018? He dressed and didn't play. So I guess maybe they just wanted him out there as a just in case option. But like again, if you're not healthy enough to start, especially when you're so thin at safety, then why is he even active? I just don't understand, using an active spot on your roster for a guy that you're not planning to use.
And last thing is let me just reiterate the whole thing about Tyson Bagent because I know he'll probably be the source of a lot of conversation and there'll be a lot of I told you so's and this and that, and people think that so last week was a range of opinions. I went from being a Justin Fields apologist to people now coming at me on Twitter about, I told you about Tyson Bagent. You guys are responsible for the hype. Look, Chicago had quite a week in celebrating or evaluating what the Raiders' victory meant for Tyson Bagent. It was a remarkable story, and it
Mhm.
remains a remarkable story. You saw on NBC tonight, they had so much trivia on Tyson Bagent, they kept shoving it down the viewers' throats even after it was a blowout. So he has nothing to be ashamed of. He has nothing to feel bad about. They lost a game. He can feel bad about that, but I don't think that this isn't necessarily about what Tyson Bagent wasn't. It's
Mhm.
about kind of who he is as a quarterback. He'll get better. He's a 23-year-old rookie. I think the expectations might have been oversized just because of how he performed in a victory over the Raiders. But saying that Justin Fields should get the job back if he's healthy is not an indictment on Tyson Bagent as much as just recognition about this is the way it works in the NFL. Justin
Right.
Fields has more talent and ability and going to put you in a better chance to win. And Tyson Bagent has some limitations he'll get better at, but they were kind of exploited at times tonight. So this is kind of the order of things in the NFL. And the NFL, as great of a story as it was, and it had the Hollywood backdrop, NFL doesn't care. It's not
No.
sentimental. Reality intervened, and this is what you get.
Right. And yeah, like I don't understand why. And we had this. I know that most of the shows on the score had this conversation this last week, but and it'll probably continue. Like this can just be a nice story.
Yep.
Like it's highly improbable he was going to make a roster, let alone be the number 2 quarterback, let alone start and win a game in his first start. Right. Like all of that is like Hollywood movie type stuff after he came from a Division 2 school. Like that can just be a nice story. And look, he's going to make a bunch of money playing in the NFL because he's good enough to be an NFL backup for a long time. And you can make a lot of money doing that. And that's great for him. Heck, he might even just be on the Bears again next season. But the idea that he can be a high level NFL starting quarterback should be done after this game. Like you saw the limitations, you saw that if you need a quarterback to like, hey, our defense doesn't have it today, we got to score. They couldn't get it done, and it wasn't all on him. I think there's scheme problems. Certainly, the offensive line, they didn't run the ball as well as they did last week, and they're playing from behind almost immediately. But like you got it, like this season ultimately, and I know you and Dan have talked about this a bunch. Like this season ultimately is about what is Justin Fields, and they still need to answer
Right.
that question. Like I know some people think they have their answer. I think we're getting close to an answer, but he deserves the chance to go out there and try to convince you that he can be your long-term starting quarterback. And especially with the way this season's going down the tank, like you're going to have some choices to make, so you need to have as much information about him as you possibly can.
Totally agree. There are 9 games left. That's a promise, not a threat. And they'll be able to evaluate him down the stretch, provided he stays healthy. So
Right.
we'll continue to talk about that. Adam, I think that what we're going to do with Dan being on the road and coming back, when he gets back to Haugh, we're going to push our podcast back from maybe Tuesday morning to maybe later Tuesday. We're going to try to tape it on Tuesday just so he gets his bearings, and rather than have somebody who wasn't at SoFi, I want to get his impression. So we're going to push the
For sure.
podcast back a day, and we'll continue to monitor things going on at Haugh all week long. Now, if something happens on Monday, we certainly will be here to have what they call an emergency pod. We'll react, but we will probably be back on Tuesday, either afternoon or Wednesday morning, to bring you the latest on the Bears. I think we're going to wrap it up unless you have anything else to add.
That's all I got. It was a boring game. Just a
It was
boring
a
game.
bad game. I'm going to get to sleep so we can get up
Yeah.
at 5:30, talk about it on the Mully and Haugh show. For Adam Studzinski, for Dan Weeder, who's in LA, in the locker room making deadline, I'm David Haugh from 670 Score. We'll talk to you next time on the Take the North podcast. Thank you for listening.